we're going to talk about the specific of Amp Studio and what really brought me to it and why I like it. And to start off with, what I've done here is I've gone to my browser and I've brought up the studio in a web browser and I have a blank slate. Now what I did do is I went out and bought a subscription for the premium account, which is not very costly, which affords me more sounds, more loops, a little more flexibility in what I'm going to do. So as I start, and I'm going to start by saying I'm not a programmer by trade. I'm a person that will mix sound. I'm used to computer screens. All that's fine with me, but I don't really write songs or create loops. And I'm going to walk us around and show how simple it is to really create sounds and loops. So our next step here is I've opened up Amp Studio. It's running as a web app here. If you recall from the first time I talked, this is what we call a hybrid app. It can run on your computer and piece of software or purely on the web. I'm going to build this on the web. So as we look around, where I would start is here to the right. This is what I would call a sound bin. It's called in this software, it's a sound library. And you'll see there are folders here. What I'm going to do is go to a folder called Construction Kits. And Construction Kits is a group of files that you can form the basis of a song. So it has drums, bass, pianos, guitar, so on and so on. So I'm going to double click this, and you'll see it says Kit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll click inside of here, and you'll see we have a list of things. We have bass, a couple of drum kits here, a guitar part, a piano part, another piano part, a couple of synths part, and a synth lead. Now, if you look more closely at the names, you'll see, like, let's take bass 1. You'll see that there's a wave file next to it, right to the left hand. That means that part is a loop. So you go down, there's drums 1, and there's a little wave file. Now, when I work with bands or we start on a track, we always start with drum parts. So I'm going to go up here and towards top, and I'm going to pick a drum loop. So I'm going to pick drum 1, and I'm going to drag it into the center, which is the arrangement screen. So I'll click it here. You'll see the circle. It just downloaded a file. It pulled it up into my browser from the cloud. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it and drag it to my left so that it starts right on this bar. You'll see this ruler up top. This is bars. Okay, so this is bar 2, 3, 4. So I just dragged the loop up here to bar 2. So we're going to click up here in the bar. You'll see there's an orange line. That's what we call our playback head or our cursor. Hit the space bar. We have a drum part. Generally, when I do drums, I want to add a bass part. And you'll see as each time that I drag these in, you're going to see it creates a new track. So let's drag bass 1. Now I want to show you something here. In bass 1, you'll see there's 2 files. One has to the left what looks like a waveform. That means it's a pre-recorded loop. And the one up top has a bunch of squares to the left of the name, and that means it's a MIDI file. For the purpose of this, I'm going to stay with the loop for now. So I'm going to highlight the bass part. I'm going to click and drag it and line it up with the drum part. Now you'll see that the bass part tends to extend off to right beyond the screen. If you want to change the zoom of the screen, you move this little bar down here and it zooms out. So the first thing that I would say to myself is, okay, got a bass and drum part, but the drum part's a lot shorter than the bass part. So there's two ways to fix that. You could, as you would in a word processor, what you could do is copy, you hit the Command C key, just like you would on a word processor. You copy it, you click on the blank space, you hit the Command V, and that's going to paste it, but it's kind of far away. So you click it and drag it and line it up, and you'll see now that the drum part's twice as long, so let's play it. Okay. So we have a drum and bass part. So typically what I would add next to this is next to these parts would be a keyboard part. Now you look on the left and watch this time. Every time I add a part, it's going to create a new track. So let's just pick one. Let's do synth 1. There again, because it's got a waveform next to it, that means that this is a loop file. We'll drag it out. You'll see it downloads the file. Let's just drag the file in so it lines up with the bass and drums. So I like the synth part, but I feel like it needs a little more depth in terms of chordal structure. So what I would add to this is I would add let's go down the list. Here's a piano sound. Now this piano sound is not a loop, it's a MIDI file, because you can see the little squares here. So we're going to pull this. You'll see it download, and there again, as I said, each time I do it, you see that there's new tracks here. So we'll click and drag it up so it starts at the same place. Now that I have a MIDI file, that's great, but there are no sounds yet attached to that. So if you look below here, there's a thing called a device chain. And this box where you add sounds. So the one that it comes in with by default is called the Volt Mini. We're not going to use that for piano because it's a single voice synth, and if I play it, you'll hear it's not really going to cut it. Not very pretty sounding. So if we want to do something else, what we can do, if you look on the top left, there's a little green button that looks like a power button. If you click it and it goes gray, it means it's not on anymore. Okay? So we want to find a piano sound that those notes can key. So you'll notice here is a little plus button. We're going to hit plus. It gives us a list of things to choose from. I'm going to go to the top and pick what we call the GM player. Okay, and by default, you'll see here there's a square here that says Acoustic Piano. You actually have a choice to change the sounds. There's a whole list of sounds here. There's a accordion, which probably wouldn't fit in this song, steel acoustic guitar, upright bass. We're going to go with just an acoustic piano. I would say as a starter sound, that's really not a bad sound for a grand piano. So far, let's play this a little bit more. So I feel like I want to add one more thing. So we'll add, let's look through the list. There is pianos, synths, bass drums, a guitar part. Let's put a guitar part in. So drag it over to our arrangement screen. Downloads the sound. Create a new track. Let's line it up. Let's see what we got. pretty cool. We now have drums, bass, synth part, grand piano part, and a guitar part. So we built the basic form of a song, and if we wanted to make it longer than this, it'd be very simple to extend these loops. But we're just going to work on 4 bars for now, just to kind of make the point of how you build a song. So now what I'm going to do, because I'm going to work on these same 4 bars, I'm going to show you how to put this into loop mode, where the software will just play a group of bars again and again until you tell it to stop. And this is where I'm going to go through the top of the screen now. I'm going to point out a few things, of which one is the loop bar. So if I wanted to create a loop, we go back and look at this, which is the bar counter up here. If you highlight in here, and you see that orange bar there, that says that the loop parts can start at bar 2 and go to bar 3. But since this is a 4-bar piece, we want it to go for 4 bars. So if you click at the end, this turns into an arrow. You go to the end of 4 bars, hit the space bar. Okay, so you see what it does. It just keeps playing that part again and again until you hit the space bar and stop. So while we're up here, I'll describe what the rest of this does. So this is a metronome. If you want to have and you have these because if you're going to add parts sometimes from scratch, you need something to keep the beat. So that's this. That click is key, it keeps the beat. You have a record button if you want to record in sound files like a vocal track from the mic in the computer. If you want to do a MIDI track into here, because you can hook a keyboard up to this software and you can do your own parts. That's the play button, same thing as the space bar. This takes you back to the top of the bar counter. And because I started on bar 2 and not in bar 1, it's going to take me to bar 1. So and lastly, you'll see next to that it says 4/4. That's the signature for if it's a 4/4 bar. If this was a waltz, then you would change that. Next to that is the tempo. It always starts at default of 125 BPMs. If I wanted the song to be a bit slower, I could click in here and say let's type 115. You'll see it's slower. Or I can make it faster. Let's make it 140. Okay. And lastly, next to that is what we call the counter, and it will count you in 2 ways. It'll it'll count in time. It starts off default as time, but if you click it, it'll count in bars. Okay, so we've covered our sound files here and our loops and our MIDI files. This is a screen where we pull in the loops and start to build a song. It creates, each time we pull in a loop, this creates tracks. And to go through the tracks a bit, you see there's 4 things here. There's an M button which stands for mute, which means if I push this, I'm going to mute the drums. So that muted the drums. If you hit the The S, which is a solo key, this will solo the drums by themselves. This is useful when you don't want to take the parts off, you just want to hear certain parts alone. These two keys here, this is it's a little microphone. If you click it, it turns bright red. This is what you would do if you want to do a vocal track or add a live part. You would click this, and whatever's plugged into the laptop or the PC would then record into the timeline. I'm going to come back to this and show you how to do this, but that's what this does. This is a keyboard sign here. There again, if you click it so it turns bright red, if you want to play a MIDI part into your sequence, that's what this is for. So let's take a listen to what I've built so far. So we're playing this, and it's my feeling that the grand part's really loud, so I want to turn it down. We want to adjust the volumes of a couple of parts so that we have a better balance of what the song's going to sound like. So how would we do that? If you look down here on the left, down at the bottom, you see a little corner here that has a couple things. It has a fader, which is a volume for the track that I've highlighted here. It has a pan pot to pan it from left to right. It has another duplication here of the record button for sound files, or the MIDI record. So what I want to do is go through here and adjust the volume so that it makes a little more sense. I'm going to put it in loop mode. I'm just going to let it play and adjust gains. So I'm going to highlight the piano track. This is the piano track. Turn the volume fader down. So that I think is a better balance. And then I say, this sounds good, but I can't hear the guitar enough. So I'm going to highlight the guitar track. So now I have a balance where I can hear stuff a little bit better. Okay, so lastly, we haven't really changed panning, and if you hear this now in the speakers, it's a mono sound coming from both speakers. So if I was doing a mix, what I would probably do is keep the drums, bass, and the grand piano all in the center. But my style would be to take the guitar apart, let's pan it to the left. Let's go up here to this key, to this part that has a synth key. Let's pan it to the right. Let's see what that sounds like. So what we have now is a nice stereo field. The blends make more sense. Now I can hear the parts, and this is something you'll do as you add parts. You'll always be building the mix. Last things I do, I still think the grand piano is too loud and the synth is not loud enough. So while I'm on the synth track here, track 3, I'm going to turn it up. And turn the piano down some more. So we've created a pretty good rough, and one of the things I always like to do when I work is to create a mix where the parts are in balance the way they would be in a song, because a lot of times if you listen to a part too loud out of the context of the song, it may sound great, but when you pull it back in with the bass and drums and all the rest stuff, it may not work as well as you think it does. So it's better to construct a mix that sounds like a natural mix of how a record would sound, where the sounds are all have a proper proportion where one thing won't drown out another part. Next, what I would do here, and this is, I always say it's good to keep track of what you're up to. I've dragged in these sounds, and as you'll see, they each just say track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4. And that's fine for right now because I remember what they are. But say I put the song away for a day, and I come back and I go, what was track 5? I don't recall what part I put there. If I don't, I'd have to sit here and go through one at a time and solo them and try and recall. I always say as you work, as you go along, mark things because it saves you time and it makes your life a lot more simple. So it's really not hard to do in the software. You go up to where it says, let's go to track 1. We click twice. You see it highlights the name. We drag the cursor back, so it's blue. I'm going to type in drums. This part is bass, so I'll do the same thing. Forgot to drag this back. Bass. That's a synth part. This is the piano part. And this is the funky guitar part, as I call it. Okay. So now when I come back to this song in a day or so, I will recall what all the parts are. So this is great. We built the bed for a song. I've walked you around what the stuff is. The last thing that I haven't done yet is I need to save the work. So what I'm going to do is go over here to File, and I'm going to say Save. It's going to ask me to name the song. I'm going to call it, for me, Segment 2, New Song 2, because this is the second time I've done this. I'm going to save it. So now that sequence and the files are all saved up in the cloud. So as I said in the first piece that we did, this being a hybrid piece of software, I can go over to my friend's house as a synth player, and all I got to do is bring this up in a browser and log into my account, and I can pull open this song and we can do work on it. So that's the basic tour around starting with the software. And for somebody like me who's not a programmer, to be able to just build a beat this simply and to create a bed is really great.